Good morning, everybody. This is Don Pren with InsMark. You're really in for a treat today. We're starting a completely new sales idea series, and this is episode one. So, congratulations for all of you who are organized enough to figure out how to get to the very first episode. I'm really excited about this program, particularly because of who the speaker will be for these various episodes. We're going to do these sales idea programs once or twice a month, depending on Chris Jacob and his schedule and sort of how that works. Let me tell you a little bit about your speaker today. Chris Jacob is the co-founder of Repredict Corporation, as well as Next Point Solutions. He's a certified financial planner, got that degree in 1988. He's been a presenter at the top of the table, was a featured speaker at several InsMark symposiums. And that's all important for you to know. More importantly, though, is that Chris Jacob and I met in the mid-90s, so 30 years ago. And he very quickly became an important resource to InsMark. And the reason is because he has not only an incredible knowledge of all of the different InsMark software systems, but his brilliance in case design is really unusual and remarkable. And so today in episode one, one of the things that we're trying not to do is to give you too much in one presentation so that everybody's head is spinning and you can't really go apply something. What we're going to do these episodes, and you're going to see today over the next 45 minutes, is Chris walking through one sales idea with the InsMark software and sort of maybe some accompanying things with that. And then, episode two will continue on. We'll go to the next sales idea, and we're just going to kind of roll forward in a very bite-sized way. But I think you're going to find that Chris is I like to call him the Sherpa if you're climbing Mount Everest. I don't want to climb Mount Everest by myself. I want a couple Sherpas there to help me. And Chris Jacob is the, the goat of Sherpas in helping you with case design for the life insurance industry in general, but more specifically using InsMark software to do it. So with that, Chris, thank you so much for being here and agreeing to do this sales idea episode series. Welcome to the podcast, and we're all really excited to see what you want to show us today.
Okay, it's an honor and a privilege. And what I hope to achieve today is when we're done with this presentation, that little circle that says increase your commissions, that you have actionable intelligence on how to go out and look at your book of business and find the low-hanging fruit that you can go out and present this to right away, okay? And just to give you a sneak peek of what we're going to accomplish today, it's going to be an individual 60 years old with $1 million IRA. And what we're going to do is this. We're going to show him how, by just repositioning that IRA into a life insurance policy, he can reduce his retirement taxes paid by about $500,000, while at the same time transferring more wealth all along the way to the heirs and generating a little over $900,000 more in net spendable income. And you could probably just start with these two graphics that I showed you. Taxes don't do it, income don't do it. And with this IRA rescue program, taxes and income. So how do we get started? Well, we're going to open that Wealthy and Wise, all right? And I'm just going to call him Tim Thomas. We'll put IRA rescue. So I'm building this from scratch for you. And he is going to be 60 years old. And we'll just do this on him. He's retirement at 71. 40% tax bracket, pre-retirement, post, and for heirs. So what we want to do first is figure out what we're going to use for premiums for the policy, okay? How do we do that? And this is where InsMark comes into play like no other, because let's go into his retirement plan assets and let's give him an IRA, and we're going to make it $1 million. What I'm going to show you really will work with any amount of qualified plan monies. And let's say that the return we're going to use is 6.5, and then we'll throw in a 1% management fee. Now I want to check this box here. I want to do schedule because this is where I want to schedule the distribution of this IRA over a 10-year period because that's what our premiums are going to be. So I'm going to check that radio box there per schedule only. I'm going to put level amount to deplete and from age 60 to 69. All right. I hit apply. Gotta love it. It gave me 125,435. Now I like using round numbers. So I'm going to put just $125,000 in there. If you don't know about the equal button in InsMark, it's one of your best friends. So if I just did equal all the way down the line, okay, notice in year 10, I've got more than 125. I got 136.07. I don't need all that, but I'm going to show it being distributed because I don't want RMDs being calculated on $5,400. So 136.07. So in a 40% bracket, that tells me that what I have left to allocate to a life insurance policy over 10 years is $75,000. Okay. So the policy, by the way, what I'm going to show you with this program called Repredict, well, it doesn't matter what carrier it is. It doesn't matter what product is. It's company agnostic and product agnostic. But for this case, I went in and put in this illustration, 75 grand a year for 10 years, solve for income coming out of 83 grand, okay? Minimum non-MEC policy, maximum income. We are now going to go to a program that my partner, I was the impetus for, my partner Bob was the genius for, actually got a patent on this, and it's called Repredict, okay? And it's now integrated with InsMark. And you can, there's several ways to get the Repredict, I'll show you, but this will show you how to use it in 5 minutes. I'll give you some of its attributes along the way. But once you go into log in and you're here, let's just start a new ledger. We call them ledgers. And I'll title this of Thomas 1 mil IRA. Now, first and foremost, we want to get that illustration in here. And there's several ways with carriers that are linked with InsMark, you can do that. There's a lot of carriers that aren't linked with InsMark. You got to do the copy and paste thing, and some have their illustrations, coded so that you can't do that. Pretty much we can get any illustration in here. See where it says extract PDF? So once you've made your illustration and stored it, okay, we're going to go and choose files, and I want that one right there. So this thing's going to bring in that entire illustration. Of course, I don't need all of it, but out of those, 43 pages, I'm just going to click that one and that one. I'm going to hit extract pages, and it's going to tell me I can download it. And I am now going to say, I want that loaded into my file, and I'll just put ext-insmark. So really, I only have 2 pages out of all that, okay? So I'm going to go back to Repredict. You'll see these main buttons and functions up here. So I now want to import the data. So I'm going to hit import. By the way, it can be a CSV file. It can be your own customized spreadsheet. But in this case, we want to upload that 2-pager. And if I hit upload, boom, presto changeo, it comes in. Now, like some carriers, these columns here are based on their guarantees. I don't want those. So notice I'm in the edit mode. So what I can do here, drag across and say, delete selected columns. Furthermore, it's going to bring in all years for this. Typically, I'm not going to want the years beyond age 100. So I'm just going to highlight these and delete selected rows. Okay. So now I got it in the way I want it. And if you're anal retentive and you don't like the 00 age thing, you can rename a column, and I'll just take that out of here. But right now we're using this program just to get this data over into InsMark. Okay. By the way, if I wanted to, I could export this data and I could have it as a CSV. Okay. Right there by hitting that. But for the time being, I want to hit the button, plan with InsMark. Okay. Now, notice this has a smart find on it that you can see. It's grab the annual premium, the loan, policy value for accumulated value, surrender value, and death benefit. If those didn't match up for whatever reason, you have a drop down box where you can manually pick and set if it doesn't catch which one it is. So let's do THOMASIRA 1 mil. Insurance company. This one happens to be Symetra, and their policies at accumulator is sent, and we'll just short name it that. And this one, their new crediting rate is 6.16%. Name of insured, obviously I can't glean that from the spreadsheet, so we'll make it Tim Thomas. It can get his age. We can't tell whether we got male or female here. Notice it did bring in the right death benefit. It's now brought all this in. So now I want to do save and submit. So this is kind of like a button that you would have in, a link carrier button. So when I hit save and submit, what this is going to do is going to go into InsMark, and it's going to give me the choice of where I want to put this data. Do I want to put it in my web-based InsMark, or like me, do I want to allocate it and have it go into my desktop version? So I'm just going to click Wealthy and Wise here. All right. Don't do anything when this pops up. Okay. So now it is in Wealthy and Wise. I say in Wealthy and Wise, really it is now available in the data file, as I'll show you, amongst all of the InsMark modules. So let's go back into Wealthy and Wise. All right. Now remember, I've got a policy that's slated to distribute $83,256 a year for income. And I want to put that in under my desired income. So desired cash flow, I want to put spendable, and I can do it here from 60 or from 71 to, or actually here, 83,256 tax-free income. Again, if I just hold down the equal sign, this will take it all the way out. Okay. So that's what I want for cash flow. We still are going to leave this as a scheduled, just like we did here. Okay. With 125,000. And I now want to show policy values coming into this. So other assets. Now, if it's an estate tax issue and a plan, which we'll get into later episodes, you would want to have that outside of the estate. For the time being, we're just going to assume that they have they have assets less than $30 million and they're not going to be subject to estate taxes. So we're just going to click that, check that button there, drop down box, and say this is our proposed life insurance. Now, schedule. I want to get this data in here. By the way, notice the repredict button. I could go back into repredict if I wanted to. There's several places in InsMark where that's been incorporated. But now I'm just going to hit import, which is going to take me to the InsMark data files. And see, Thomas, I'm just going to hit edit so that you can see how everything came through. It came through just like a button file. Okay, gave us the name, 41 years to illustrate. Let's just make it 40. And policy details, named it, brought in the death benefit, brought in the crediting rate, gives us our disclaimer. Here's our premiums, here's our loans, here's all the account balances, accumulated value, surrender value, death benefit. I hit OK here, I hit OK here, and boom, it's now in here. There's the premiums, there's the loans. I do want to check this box here. I want premiums as dedicated cash flow, okay, because I want to show that as a desired cash flow for dedicated. So what do I have going on now? Well, I've got money coming out of the retirement plan that's going to fund that. This is when I go into the report section, okay? So I'll show you, I mean, we can have all these reports, sometimes less is more, but this is kind of the way I like to set it up. And let's do this. And do that. By the way, once you get it set up the way you want, uh, you can hit set my defaults and you can name it. So I'll just name this Thomas 1. Save. So next time I go in here, I don't have to put them in like this. I just hit the drop down box and I pull up Thomas 1. These will populate just like you see here. So let's see what this looks like. Preview. Now, notice this came up because I'm going to have some excess cash flow. Remember, I drew out more than what I needed for premium. So I'm going to go and I want to mark that as excess cash flow. In other instances, it perhaps would be reinvested, but that's for another time in another sample case. So back to here, I want to preview and see what this looks like. So I'm going to hit preview. And yeah, this person has other assets, but we want to show them just the impact of repositioning this $1 million IRA. Okay, notice we got the life insurance death benefit. Here's the taxes, here's the life expectancy, and we're saying that he's going to get, without fail, 6.5% on his money. So notice desired cash flow, spendable cash flow, 83,256. Dedicated cash flow is what we need to fund the life insurance policy, $75,000 a year. Hang on one second. A little pro tip here. It'll do 40 to a page years. So typically I just want that to be 40. Notice I did 100. That brought it to 41 years. So now if I just have it go for 40 years and I hit preview, I'm going to just get 40 years on one page, which is probably sufficient for most people unless you're dealing with somebody who's like 30. And let's look and see where we can see expected cash flow. Well, it brought in the policy loans from the policy that we put in. So from a standpoint of what I need and what's supplied, it's here. Pardon me, I'm a little anal retentive. I have my own color schemes here, and I want this to just be, by the way, I can share these things with you folks if you want. Okay, so I like it like this. All right. Yeah, I like green for money coming in. Okay, this is what I need for spendable. I mean, for for dedicated for the premium, this is what I need for spendable. Add those two up. This is what I need in total. And you'll see here that I've got a little more than what I need because I'm not needing income in this year. So I'm just going to categorize this as excess cash flow. It's just the extra money that I took out of the IRA that I didn't want hanging around at, like, you know, hanging chads to do RMDs on. And so I've got this expected cash flow. You'll see there's no red in here, which is a good thing. Yellow chose to have that in there, highlighted, that's life expectancy, but we took them out to 99. All right.
Hey, Chris,
So, yes.
let me jump in for a second. So,
Okay.
a couple things. One is this entire presentation is recorded, and everyone who signed up for the meeting is going to get the recording. So Chris is, going through, depending on your experience level, Chris is going pretty fast. What I want to summarize, and for some of you, he's not going fast enough. I understand that. But what I want to summarize is that we have a client who has $1 million in some type of qualified plan. And they can either go along the way they're going now and not buy life insurance and just see what that produces for retirement income. Or what Chris has showed you is what that $1 million in the retirement plan would produce if we started taking money out of it now to the tune of funding premium of 75,000 a year. As you can see, if we did that, that $1 million in the pension plan would be extinguished over 10 years and then fund that 83,000 a year in tax-free income from the loans from the policy. So, the way Chris did that is he came over to InsMark, used Wealthy and Wise, the Wealthy and Wise software. He used the $1 million. There was a utility in Wealthy and Wise that he started with that showed how much that would produce in income in those 10 years. If you had $1 million in a pension plan, you took it out and paid the tax, and that's where he got the 75,000. Then he went over to Repredict. He created that 10 pay, put it in the Repredict chassis where he's going to show you why in a minute. And then he brought it back over, and he's now running it again in Wealthy and Wise to show the illustration you're seeing now. So I just want to make sure everybody's kind of gets the big picture that what we're looking at is $1 million retirement plan and sort of a do it, don't do it. Leave it alone or liquidate it over 10 years and fund alert. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Don. Yeah, I told Don and Tony before I got on, and my partner Bob, that I've actually been using InsMark since before I was married, before I had kids, and I now have 5 grandchildren between 11 years old and 6 months old. So that definitely dates me. Uh, so here's that
Yeah, and
breakdown.
Chris, one last
Yep,
thing. One last thing.
yep,
There's only $32 trillion in qualified plans.
yeah.
So if you can figure out how to optimize and increase their net after tax income from their qualified plan assets, you don't really need to know anything else. It's a $32 trillion market. Go ahead, Chris.
Yep, and never been taxed before, and we're just showing taxes staying here. So you can see we did the solve. I just levelized it and put it at 125 grand a year at 40% bracket. That's the after-tax amount. Again, pulled out more than what I needed because if $5,400 would have been left over, it would be calculated in RMDs all the way down the line, and it just looks goofy. Okay, so now this shows me when I pull 125,000 and I pay a 40% tax, there's a tax I'm paying every year, and here's the cumulative running total. All right. So assuming they get rainbows and unicorns, 6.5% year in, year out, that's what it looks like. We know that's not the case, but we got to use a sample. So estate assets detail. Here's my pre-tax value of my qualified plan assets. And notice it's dropping because we're distributing those and putting them into life insurance. Here's the life insurance death benefit. So my total estate assets are comprised of that pre-tax value of the qualified plan assets, the actual death benefit of life insurance. So you see total estate assets here. However, were they to die, both husband and wife, while there's still money in the qualified plan, there would be what's called income with respect to a decedent. And we've got that taxed at 40% also. That eventually goes away once those dollars have been repositioned. So the tail of the tape here in what heirs are going to get, total estate assets, pre-tax value of the qualified plan assets, plus the death benefit, minus the taxes related to the IRA if it goes to a non-spouse beneficiary upon death, gives you this total that's transferred to heirs. Net of all that $83,000 of tax-free cash flow. So we got that in there as one scenario. What is InsMark best at? Bob Ritter said you've always got to compare do it versus don't do it. And I think one of his best lines, I use it all the time, real wealth is about sustainable cash flow, right? So let's see how this IRA rescue would compare to what if they just keep the money in the IRA and get 6.5% year out and try to net out that same $83,000 that the life insurance is going to produce. So I'm just going to hit copy here, and I'm going to name this status quo. Okay, now it's going to make a clone of what I did up here. Obviously, status quo is not going to have life insurance in it, so I'm going to hit the edit button. What's going to remain the same is my desired cash flow. I still want that coming to me, okay? My retirement plan assets, yes, still be $1 million, yes, projected at 6.5%. But rather than having the scheduled distribution like we have here, I wanted to just take it as needed, all right? And in here, status quo, I don't have the life insurance, so I'm just unchecking that box, okay? Let's go over to our report sections because we got this the way we want it now. Details of cash flow required, cash flow analysis. Already I can tell there's not going to be enough, otherwise shortfall of required cash flow would not show up, okay? And let's look, how did we do? If it's going to run out of money, it's going to give you the warning here. Do you want to continue or do you want to return to it? Or, you know, in this case, I just want to review the shortfall, for instance. I want to see how long does this last before it runs out? You can see it runs right out, right about there. So there's $930,000 that this doesn't produce compared to the IRA rescue program. So let's just do a preview on this. I'm going to hit preview. Now I'm going to just hit continue. There's my balance sheet with just the million on it. I want this for living expenses, just like I did in the IRA rescue program. Notice on my cash flow analysis, red means I don't have any money left. Arrow over one more. Here's that shortfall that we just looked at, which amounts to $930,000. Why do we have a shortfall? I used to tell clients, Webster's definition of gross is ugly and you don't get to spend it. Okay. You know you're going to use that. 40% taxes. I got a pre-tax take, $130,760 to net out what I'm going to get tax-free out of life insurance. Okay. And we run out right there. Now let's look at the taxes paid along the way. Here's my annual taxes. Here's the cumulative running total. And this is like an equation almost that works out the same every time. Notice by the time this ran out of assets, my total taxes paid were, in most cases, it's equal to or greater than my starting account balance. Nobody's shown them this before. Everybody's focused on accumulation. Nobody is showing them the impact of distributions and that they have a choice as to what to do. And I would also have that income with respect to a decedent taxation upon death before it goes to my heirs, right? So that column right there. By the way, we haven't gotten to this yet, but we may in future ones. If this is subject to an estate tax, that total is 64%. If they're living in New York or California, it's about 73%. We refer to it as an IRA for the IRS. So here's my wealth transfer to heirs, pre-tax value of the qualified plan assets minus the tax, net to heirs. Okay. So I've got my two scenarios in the way I want them. And they're right there. Okay. This is where the rubber meets the road. I want to compare, and this InsMark's the only thing I know you can do this with. Okay. I'm going to add a new comparison, and I'm just going to call it status quo versus IRA rescue. I better spell that right. And it's going to, when I hit tab, boom, it's going to fill it in right there for me. Now I want to pick my scenarios and how I want them showing up. I actually want status quo to show up first. And by the way, you can, depending upon your preference, you can name it phase, you can name it plan, you can customize it. I just usually leave it strategy and strategies. So I'm going to type in status quo. You may have a scenario name that's very long and you want to make a short name for it here, for instance. That's why it's giving you the option to actually attach a name to it. And I'll put IRA rescue. And we've only got two scenarios in there, so that's all we're doing a comparison to. I now want to go and select my reports. All right. Now, this was pre-populated for me. The thing I like to show first, let's start off with what's a numerical comparison of the retirement plan taxes paid. I then like to show that in graphic format. Most people are visual. Then we're going to do a numerical comparison of alternatives. By the way, if you highlight one of these things and just want to see, hey, what's that consist of? I just hit this quick preview button. There it is. Okay, one more anal retentive thing. I like my output when I'm comparing to be red versus green. And I don't want those shaded, but I want the dollar values in color. Okay. So now let's look at how my preview turns out. All right. There it is. To start with, here's that comparison of retirement taxation. We went to the whip early, so we hit the tax man early here. Here, we deferred it and took it out only when we needed to. Here's that running total of the status quo. And here's my IRA rescue. Well, that's it numerically. And here it is graphically. So
and Chris, hold on a sec.
Yep.
Chris, hold on a sec. Okay, so let's just absorb this for a minute. Okay. So no, go to the other graph.
Mm-hmm.
There. Okay, hold on. Okay, so what we're saying here, everybody, is that if they do nothing and they just keep their $1 million and they take the money out as planned, that's the status quo. They're going to pay $1,044,000 in taxes. That's how much they're going to pay. If they do the alternative plan, they're going to pay $502,000 in taxes. There was a question, and we'll get to the question and answers at the end. But please go ahead and ask them because that'll queue up. Question is great. But they were saying, why can a LIRP be better than just an IRA that you just leave it alone? And the answer is, look at the screen. That's why. Okay, I'm happy now, but I want to make sure everybody absorbs this. I don't want to just fly by it. It's important. Go ahead.
Yeah, the tax man cometh. Okay. Uh, Now this is the big kahuna screen. Okay, this is a comparison of alternative screen. So it's got spendable cash flow, status quo versus IRA rescue. It's got net worth. It's got wealth to heirs. Notice what happens here. We run out. We already saw that. Here we don't. So if you add these columns up, here we got about $2.5 million of tax-free cash flow. Here, $1,567,000. And furthermore, look at the differential in wealth transfer to heirs all the way along. To ultimately, there's nothing left here. Okay, here this is numerically. Here it is graphically. I love this page. Okay, all along, heirs get more in wealth transfer. We're maximizing the wealth transfer to heirs versus, hey, everybody's tuned in to radio station WIIFM. What's in it for me? Well, for Tim, implement it correctly, and assuming taxes stay at 40%, he'll get about $1.5 million. And assuming he gets 6.5% every year in and out, he'll get about $1.5 million. The IRA rescue, he gets projected income of about $2.5 million. All right. And then
Chris, let me jump in and say one other thing. I've got a couple comments talking about, well, you should have used a 5% rate instead of 6.5%. And well, the tax bracket would be lower. And well, what about this? Agree with all that. The value of this tool is it isn't going to lie and always make life insurance win. The value of the tool is assume whatever you want. Every client's going to be different. Taxes are going to be different and so on. Ages are different. Put in the assumptions, compare the two plans, and the life insurance LIRP will either be better or it'll be worse. The system is agnostic as to which one it shows better for the client. Go ahead.
And by the way, think about this for a minute, and I've done it before. What if the tax bracket is less? What if it's 30%?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, now don't I have more premium to fund into my life insurance policy because of the after-tax distribution is going to be greater?
Well, right? You plug it in and see. I don't know.
I love it.
Another day, we'd plug that in, that 30%, and we would see, wouldn't we?
Yeah. So we can do that. I'll do it here in a minute. But if we do it at 30%, okay, we can do that rather quickly. We can create a new scenario and call it 30%, right? And then I could have that compared. I could have IRA rescue 40% taxation, and I could have IRA rescue 30% taxation. Of course, I'd have to go back and run a new life insurance illustration and all that good stuff. But tax brackets being lower really aren't that big of an issue. I'll tell you another way that tax brackets, and I've run this before, what if they're under 59 and a half? Your ideal right fit client for this, somebody 59 and a half and older, has qualified plan money. They're either looking to use it as income down the road or they're looking at wealth transfer. We're just focusing on income today. Okay. What if they're under 59 and a half? Well, if you take distributions, what do you get hit with? Ordinary income tax plus a 10% penalty. I've run this thing working with other advisors for clients who are under 59 and a half, and even taking into account a 40% ordinary tax plus a 10% for a total of 50, this still wins. Okay. So there's my retirement plan taxes. And I like bar graphs. I just do it at various ages: net worth, transfer taxes, wealth to heirs, status quo. This is at age 60. And let's look at age 70. Let's look at age 80 and look at age 90. Nothing left here. All right. So now that I've got this the way I want it, let's put together a nice presentation for them. And you do that by going preview or print client presentation. And I want to do the comparison for them. I want to have the IRA rescue in there. Now, the way I like to show this, I like to show the charts and graphs first. and then show these scenarios. I want to add a cover page of, and I got for Tim Thomas. Boom. And of course, you know, got next point solutions in here, but if you're doing this or we're helping you with the case, all your contact information is going to be here. So let's preview this and look at it. Is this the way we want it to fold out if we're showing a client? There's our table of contents. We went through the comparison, okay? I won't hold on each one of these pages because we've already gone through them. There's status quo. We'll walk them through that. And I usually tell them, look, see that column there? We just want through all these machinations to validate. See that 632, 610? Everything we just did for those who are the fact finder validators was to validate that column there. And then we're going to go through the IRA rescue and validate that column on wealth transfer to heirs and income. Okay. So now I got this the way I want it. I'm going to print it, and I'll print it to a PDF. And I'll put it in here, and I'll name status Q versus IRA rescue. Okay, I got that in there. So I'm good to go. The other thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to save this workbook. Okay, so now that this is done, it's showing me what's printed. I'm going to go here and close this out. I want to export my workbook. Export workbook. Thomas IRA rescue. And have it go in there. So I just walked you through something that pretty much anybody can do. Really, I want to show you one other thing with repredict. Actually, there's several other things, not time to tell them, but why this works so great with InsMark. Somebody was talking about 30%. What if I want to go back and make some changes to the illustration? I'm sitting in front of the client. They might have some questions. All right. So remember, we imported this, and this will import any policy data. And you can put in policy cost, all sorts of different things. But now that I've got this in here, I want to hit analyze data. And this uses artificial intelligence and some specific algorithms to look at that data. And now I want to do a prediction. See where it says start prediction? It looks just like the edit tab, but I can't edit column names and I can't put columns in before or after. What I can do is make a change here and see what effect that has on the illustration. So rather than having to go back, go into the company software, run a whole new illustration, this kind of lets you play in a sandbox. And let's just say, for instance, a person's looking at this and says, you know, what would it look like if it was 50,000 a premium? So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to drag across and I'm going to hit mark as dependent. I just want the premium to change to 50,000. Now, what this means when you see blue, it just means if I change one thing, it's going to change everything. So I make my premium 50. And I'm now going to see where it says predict all. I'm going to hit predict all. And just that fast, I have a new illustration. Now, the question is, how close is that to the illustration if I go back and put in 50 and solve for income? So this came out with 55,504. And let's look. I happen to do that for you ahead of time. If I put 50 in there, I get 55,344. Pretty doggone close. Let's look at values at 85. It shows the illustration values are 367 of cash and 456 of death benefit. What do we got here? 368 of cash and 456 of it's 99% accurate. And it's 99% accurate whether it's whole life, variable universal life, regular universal life, it doesn't matter. It's uncanny. And my Partner Bob is the genius who created these algorithms and worked together with AI to make this thing work. Okay. So, and now it's just, but down these bottom tabs, I can rename this. Okay. So I'll just put 50K premium, 50K P. That's my nomenclature for this. All right. Let's do another one, which would be very different. I'm going to start another prediction. This would not be impossible, but you'd have to do a lot of iterations. I want to see, maybe the client wants to see, what would I need to put in for premium to produce $100,000 of income? All right. And I'm going to just hit predict all. And instantaneously, I have an illustration that, as you're going to see, is fairly close. So this is saying if I put 90,084, I should get something close to $100,000. What do I in fact get? I get 100,092 bucks. Cash is 663 at 85. Death benefit is 823. So 663 and 823. What do we have here? 663 and 823. Shockingly accurate. Okay. Now, let's call that and rename it 100K income. Well, I must have done that before because it saved it. So here's something that's really cool that this can do. There's several things. Let's start a new prediction. I know that this was based off $1 million of plan assets. I'm going to go to the edit page here. I'm going to click any column, but just this one. And I'm going to put insert column before. And I'm going to rename that column as plan assets. All right. Submit. And I know I had $1 million to start with in this thing. Okay. Now I once again need to hit analyze data so it can learn the patterns of the numbers. I'm going to start a prediction. The client's looking at this and says, yeah, I really like this, but I forgot. My wife has $300,000 in her IRA. What if we combine the two and this was $1.3 million? What would that look like? I'll go back to the office this week, run some numbers and get back to you. And you couldn't even do it in your office if they're sitting there. Watch this. Mark is dependent. I'm going to change that to $1.3 million. Something that has really no relationship to the life insurance illustration, but when I hit predict all, boom. As good as InsMark is, I don't have to go back and do that solve for the depletion of assets. This does it for me. It says if I put 97,500 in, I should get something close to 108,233. So let's look. What did I get? Here's 108,372. Cash value, 85, 718. Death benefit, 891. What do I get here? 717, almost 891. Another thing that I can do with this, and let's just say this one is, we'll rename it 1.3 million plan assets, 1.3 M plan assets. Submit. Okay. Let's go back to the prediction again and reverse engineer it. And he says, hey, what plan assets do I have to start with if I want this to be $125,000? Mark is dependent and make that 125, 2, 3. Oops, 1,250,000. You could do that too, but let's reverse engineer. Predict all. Well, I would need approximately $1.5 million of plan assets. My levelized distribution would be about 112. And based upon repredict, that should, if I put that premium in, generate about 125,000. What in fact does it generate? Well, 126,036 at 85. I got 825 of cash and 1,026,000 of DB. So we go back into here and you'll see I have 828 of cash and 1,028,000 of death benefit. Here I had 1,026,000. All right. So now I want to make that rename 125K income. By the way, I forgot to do something vitally important in the beginning. You want to name and save this ledger. So see this little pen here? THOMAS 1 mil IRA. I'm going to hit the checkbox. Okay, that saved it for me. One other thing, there's several other things, but I just will show you one that you might use. If, on this 100K of income, person's looking at it and says, you know what? I like that. I like the 90, but what if I have a bad year in year 5? My business is kind of lumpy. What would that look like? Well, we call that a repredict. So this was a prediction. So now we're going to go do a prediction on top of a prediction, which is repredict. And the only variation here is I want this to be what's called an input column, because I don't want everything to change in this column. I just want that to change. So if I'm only going to change a few things, I'm not going to make it dependent. But I want these columns to be dependent on that change. So I'm going to hit repredict all. Boom. If I skip a year, that's what I'm going to get. I'm not going to go and cross-reference it. You folks have seen it already. Okay. So ultimately, I'm going to save this. Now, let's say you decide on, I want this one here. This is the one I want. I want to go with this one. Okay. We see where it says make compliant, which, by the way, if you get into this thing, and we'll get into what versions are available, but they all have this help center. If you go to help center and you click on any one of these, see staying compliant with repredict. And that's everybody's question. Is this compliant? What do the carriers think about it? Well, really, this is going to get you close enough. Obviously, you can't submit a repredict Excel spreadsheet for your AG 49 compliant illustration. So what do we do here? See what it says, make compliant? I'm going to, you can put anything you want here. Attach, please find a prediction, da, 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 da. And I want to attach this, which was the base one that I ran off of, okay? And I want to submit that to me or my illustration desk of, if I'm submitting it to illustration desk, I can hit BCC and I'm just going to hit submit. Show you where this falls later, okay? It's going to send it to my email. This is absolutely amazing. See where it says explain and visualize? We call it the AI whiteboard. I'm going to attach a file. And let's just attach what we did, which is status quo versus IRA rescue. And I want to ask this anything. There's some down here, okay? I'm going to put this, compare the two strategies numerically in 5 paragraphs. Hit that little arrow there. So you have to have something attached to this. As a matter of fact, you can attach 2 things. You could have 2 different carriers. Here you go. Boom. It just created a complete summary for you of the 2 strategies, right? I can also do this. Compare the 2 strategies and create an email. So for instance, you could have one company illustration here and another company illustration, say, compare the 2. Look at this. Hi, Tim. Hope this email finds you well. Status quo. Let's go up here for a second and look what this did in nanoseconds. Cumulative retirement plan taxes paid under status quo, total wealth to heirs. Here's the IRA rescue, tax impact. Conclusion, overall IRA rescue strategy not only met, blah, 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 blah. Uh, I want to put that in an email. Just hit that little copy button there. Okay. Well, let's go back to my email here, which, by the way, it should have come through. It will in a second. Compose. Okay. And I'm going to, boom, paste, and that whole thing's right there. Okay. So good to go on that. You can do, I'll just show you one other. Let's get rid of this. Let's just start a new request. These life insurance illustrations obviously are complex. So let's add that original life insurance illustration. And I'm just going to say, summarize the index crediting options and loan options. So this is the actual illustration that it's going to glean this information from. And what am I going to get? By the way, you could upload an InsMark loan-based split dollar illustration in here and ask it to explain it or to put it into an email. So look at this. This just went through, summarizes all the various different indexes, the standard loans, participating loans, and here's all the indices available. It's pretty amazing. Okay. Uh, let's get to repredict and how you can learn more about it. This is fully and completely integrated with InsMark. And what I love about it is in InsMark, I'm always going back and doing, okay, I just ran this illustration. Now I want to run this one. I can get that done like this and then import that data straight into InsMark. Okay. So if you go to one of the ways to do this, if you go to InsMark, you go to alliances and strategic partnerships, you will see there's repredict. Click on that button. That will take you. Now, since I already have an account, it took me straight to my ledger page, and it will too for you. Once you have an account, you're in InsMark, it'll just go straight to the ledger page. It won't go to the home page. All right. By the way, pricing, just so you know, you can have a 30-day free trial. Here's the professional version, and here's the genius version. By the way, this collaboration link, in essence, it's like having two licensees because it lets somebody collaborate and see and work with you on your case design. For instance, if you want to work with us and have a case design, we can work with you through that. Here, the difference is you have unlimited PDF, unlimited predictions of, and that thing that we call explain and visualize is the AI whiteboard. We have Slack support here. And with this one, it's tantamount really to having 3 of these. And you can import your own particular spreadsheet and make changes off of it if you have a customized spreadsheet. So I've gone past my time of allotted. Don, what questions are there at
Yeah,
this point?
let me do this. So we're going to spend a few minutes, answering the questions and so on. But I want to start this off just sort of with a little story that I think you guys will find interesting that are listening. And that is, this is a few years back. Interest rates were a lot lower, and the premium financing market was exploding. And there was a group that came to me, and they were doing some really innovative things. And they said, "Hey, we we would like you to consider promoting our platform to the InsMark customers. The InsMark customers can then use the platform, and the platform was great. And we can provide them the back end support to do the premium financing cases." And so it was like, cool. So we did, half a dozen webinars explaining the platform, and we got 400 producers to connect with this company on using their platform. 400. And this company's their kind of main model was we kind of let the producers, manage the case. We have the platform, and then we do once the policies, we manage the loans and kind of do the loan administration on the premium financing. We worked at that for 3-4 years, and of the 400 producer group, they closed exactly 0 premium financing cases in 4 years. Exactly 0. Okay. And so after that, I was approached by a different premium financing group who said, we have a different model. Our model is that we work with the retail producer who has the client, and then we actually help them design the case. We actually talk to the client, we talk to their advisors, we do all the other stuff. We also set up the loans and do loan administration, all that. But we take a very active role, and we take a larger percentage of the case. I think it varied depending on the size of the case, but they were doing split cases where they were taking lead or as much of or co-lead with the actual participating producer to close the case. And in the 5 years following, it was a very, very significant amount of cases and significant amount of premium that got done by the participating producers and that firm. So why am I telling you this story? Well, the reason I'm telling you this story is you can absolutely, and there are people I know, many in the industry that can listen to this and go it alone and do just fine. What I will tell you is if you're relatively, if this is not something that was boring to you, okay, you should strongly consider reaching out to Chris Jacob and working with Chris and Robert Strauss and their team on some joint case work, at least for the first 1, 2, 5 cases. Again, it's the Sherpa climbing Mount Everest thing. And then, if it's like, well, this all is pretty simple, and I don't need Chris to hold my hand anymore. Well, fine. But I would strongly encourage anyone who watched this presentation and had any reservation or questions or concern. I mean, there's a big question of, but clients are going to question the life insurance policy. Are the loans really going to be that much? And what happens if they're not? And what about all the life insurance questions and challenges from the advisors? That's baked in. We're not really getting into that today. We're kind of showing the nuts and bolts of the mechanics and the math, but that's a huge part of the case. And so if you haven't been doing this a lot and have a deep experience in the qualified market, it's not going to go well. So anyways, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that Chris and his team, that's part of their business. They do a lot of personal production, but they also do joint case work. And I strongly encourage you to consider that. With that said, Chris, can you see some of the questions, or am I the only?
Let me see. I've had.
It's under. Let's just kind of knock down some of these questions if we could.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm looking.
Yeah,
okay,
I'll just read them
I
out.
see 30. Yeah. Well, tell me which ones you want me to address first.
Yeah, I'll just read out the questions I want you to answer.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm just going back over real quick, everybody. Well, you know what? I'm going to start with my question. My question is, what is the ideal age and the ideal health profile and the ideal wealth profile for this?
Well,
What's the
59
bracket?
59 and a half and older, just so we don't get hit with that 10% penalty, even though we can make it work and make the numbers compelling under 59 and a half. It doesn't have to be on the IRA owner, it being the insurance. What if the IRA owner, let's say dad's got prostate cancer, unfortunately, we can put the insurance on the spouse. What if we're doing this as a death benefit play only, which I didn't illustrate here, but can, and it really blows away keeping it, okay, and maintaining it, in which case we can use a second to die to get more juice for the squeeze on the death benefit. Really, for an income play, if you will, we're good up until about 66 years old. For a death benefit play, we're good up until about 75 years old. All right. So there it is. And how much in the IRA really doesn't matter, but to make it worth your while, you probably want to have somebody $500,000 or more in an IRA. And do they have to put all of it in here? No. The other thing I tell people is, look, if you got $1 million IRA, put half here, put the other half in the market. Hopefully you tear the cover off the ball. This part is protected. Oh, and by the way, when you have to go start taking RMDs out of this portion of your IRA, we can take tax-free loans from the policy to pay the tax on the RMDs.
Okay? Yeah, one of the things that you've covered it, but I want to just elaborate a little bit, and that is that I think that the wealthier the client, the easier the close. And the reason it doesn't mean you can't do this with clients that aren't super wealthy, but one of the things with this LERP strategy is it's a diversification. against all in the market. And this is a different profile product, meaning the LERP. And so if the client can afford more diversification, doesn't have to put all their eggs in one basket, I think that could be a compelling argument. Anyway, enough of that. So you just answered that. What max age? I'm just running through the questions, everybody. Okay, it's a technical question. Okay. Question: What tax rate was being paid on withdrawals? They mean withdrawals from the pension the first 10 years. I think it was 40, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 40.
All
It
right,
was
fine.
40. Again, we could make
I
it
just want to
30.
make
We could
sure.
make it
Okay.
25. Yeah.
And then, good question. You guys are using 6.5%. It's too high. Use 5% and be more conservative. Great. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
And
fine.
why did I use 6.5%? Because the crediting rate on the insurance was 6.16. So I'd be happy to use 5, but oftentimes what you'll get is and we can certainly use a lower, rate of on the investments. But I was just trying to be fair and say, hey, what if we get an investment rate of return that's actually higher than the crediting rate we're getting on the life insurance?
Yes. And also, Prav asked a great question, which is, and I love this question. It's, can you please try to explain how the LERP plan can be a better option than the IRA? And the reason I love that question so much is that's exactly the question the client's employee benefits guy is going to ask you. And
Yep.
you have to be able to answer that. And that's why you should consider using Chris and his team, at least on the first couple of cases, because that's a hard question to answer if you're talking to someone who doesn't think LERPs are valid. I mean, we don't have to explain why the math's better. That's not what Prob's asking. Okay, he's
Yep.
asking, yeah, but I don't believe the math. The math's great, but I don't believe you. And so that's why you do joint case work until you know how to answer that question in a way that will address the concerns of the client's advisors. And you're going to be talking to clients' advisors. It won't be the client. It'll be the client a little bit, but it'll be the advisors too. And that's fine. Okay, continuing on. I'm just running. Oh, this great question from Robert Scott. How would this compare to a Roth conversion with the same amount? Great question.
What a
Great
great
question.
show. What a great show for our next program. Okay. Stay tuned. Same bat time, same bat channel. Not necessarily at the time, but I told Don, I guarantee somebody's going to ask that question. And we don't have time to show you on this one, but our next one will be focused around a Roth IRA. Keep it as a death benefit only play, Roth conversion, and a Roth conversion. And again, you can't do this without InsMark, and a Roth conversion versus the life insurance as an income play. Okay. So you're going to love it. By the way, spoiler alert, the life insurance wins.
So that'll be episode 2, and you'll see. It's like, well, when's episode 2? We're not sure yet, but we will be sending out emails. You'll see them, and promoting the webinar, and it'll have the date. It'll be in the next month. Anyway, so we're planning on doing 1 or 2 of these a month, and we'll do them as long as Chris has the energy for it. He has enough material to do 1 or 2 of these a month for the next 50 years. Just trust me on that. I worked with.
I'm 64. I plan on living to 120, so I'll be okay.
Yeah, he has an endless amount of good ideas and sales concepts. It's incredible to me. So that's not the limiter. The limiter is how long does he want to do it? And you all in the listening to this have to want us to continue to do it. So if you want us to continue to do it, please be vocal about that. Next question, good question. We've got a mathematical person in Dan Altmeyer, and I totally get his question. He's saying, can you show the net present value of the taxes paid? And what he's getting at is time value of money. Go ahead,
Right.
Chris.
Yeah, I don't have that built in. I guess we could run a special spreadsheet on that to show the net present value of the taxes paid. And for somebody who is, mathematically erudite like that, that's something that they could maybe do on their own. But, my number one thing here is this should get them, right? I mean, whatever the net present value is of this is going to be less than that.
Yeah, and it would be very easy to do as a supplemental report in Excel. That's what I would do.
Yep.
It wouldn't be hard to do. And I think it's a valid question and a valid analysis.
By the way you would get that, my partner Bob, who hasn't chimed in here, okay, I said we did get a patent on this. Bob slept about 4 hours a day for 2 years putting this thing together. See where it says one-on-one demo of, we've only shown you the tip of the iceberg of what this thing can do. But if you click one-on-one demo, Bob will be happy to just links right up. There's Mr. Strauss, links right up to his calendar. Get a one-on-one demo. And if you do indeed sign up for one of our paid licenses, one-on-one training. And then beyond that, you are in Slack support. So if you have a question at any time, day of the night, Bob's been known to answer these things at 2 a.m. So you can have a demo, and then once you sign up, it's training, which is it's a deeper dive. Okay.
Hey, Chris, can
So
you show how
yep,
you get repredict from InsMark? Go to
mm-hmm,
insmark.com and then just show how people
yep,
can sign up for it.
sure. So let's do that. Let's just go
Okay.
insmark.com. Boom. Alliances, strategic partnerships. Click strategic partnerships. Number of other good strategic partnerships. We're kind of in alphabetical order, so we come in here. So all you got to do is, when I click this, it's going to take me to my login spreadsheet account because I already have one.
Yes,
You
okay.
click that, it should take you, let's see, it should take you to our homepage. When you do that, it's going to take you to the Repredict
Yeah,
homepage,
that's all I wanted
like
you to
that.
show. That's great. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. And then you can go
Um,
to the pricing, and
yeah,
then
and
you
then
can sign up.
you can get the 30 days
Yep.
free or whatever. I'm just looking at questions. Please define the IRA rescue plan from Robert. You want to take a shot at that, Chris? How would you define it? IRA rescue.
IRA rescue is repositioning assets that are in any pre-tax plan into a specially designed life insurance policy to mitigate taxes on distributions and generate potentially more spendable cash flow and more wealth transfer to heirs.
Perfect. Do you recommend 72T for clients under 30? I don't know what. Do you? Let me read it. Do you
I know what
recommend?
they're talking. They're talking about substantially equal distributions for, and the problem you get there is that somebody is 59 and a half, they're younger, and we can do, let's put it this way, 72T for a 55-year-old will work because the way the law reads is you got to do it for a minimum of 5 years or until age 59 and a half. So if somebody's 50 and they start at 72T, they have to take that 72T distribution all the way through 59 and a half. It's best to do it at 55. And by taking the 72T distributions, substantially equal distributions, you avoid the 10% penalty.
I understand. Was this a next question? Was this a standard rating on the life policy? The policy you used, what was the
No,
rating?
no, this was it defaulted to preferred. I
Fine,
used the
preferred.
preferred rate, but it'll still work. It's standard. We've even had these things work at rated, and for a death benefit, it's if you're doing a second to die, it just blows doors. But I usually like to show the death benefit on a single life because, of course, if it works on a single life, it's going to even be better with the second to die.
Next question. How do you address annual inflation for the 30 years of income? It's a good question.
Well, you can. All I can say to somebody is, if this beats it, it beats it with inflation too, right? I mean, yeah, what's that $83,000 worth 30 years down the road? Oh, it's worth more than the person who ran out of the money with the keeping it in the IRA. Its present value isn't as much, okay, but it's still worth something more. And you could go ahead and you could design an inflation factor on taking money from the life insurance policy too.
Yeah, you could design a increasing income from both the life insurance and the existing qualified plan and compare that. You could, it would be a little work, but you could do it.
Yep.
Okay. What if you used a 5-year vanish premium instead of a 10-year? What if it was a 5 pay instead of a 10 pay? Any thoughts?
It would still work. And ideally, if you want to make it a maximum efficient contract, which is, let's use the MEC, but not the government modified endowment contract, a MEC. A maximum efficient contract would be to fund it in 7 years, and you can fund it in 5. But what happens with the 5 pay is you got to start off with a higher death benefit amount to make it a non-modified endowment contract, which is going to drive down the income a little bit. And they're going to have to pay more taxes up front, which if they're open to that, they can certainly do it. It'll still win versus status quo. Your maximum efficiency actually would be to do it over 7 years.
Here's a question from Devin. How is the life insurance play different from an income annuity?
Well, one of the things we can get with life insurance is we can get arbitrage on it. Okay. Especially when you're taking policy loans. So let's go back to, and not to make this a dissertation. See what that's accumulation value, that's surrender value. There's a difference between the two for the first 10 years, which is just a surrender charge. But notice what's happening as they're taking this income. What's happening to this accumulation value? It's continuing to go up. This policy actually has a 5.5% fixed guaranteed for life loan. But when you're borrowing this, you're not borrowing it from the policy, you're borrowing it from the general account of the insurance company. They're using your cash value as collateral. Yet you will accrue interest at 5.5%. However, if the index credits anything over 5.5%, you made money off of borrowed money. And if you look historically, the market's up 80% of the time. And when it's up, this is an interesting factoid, 75% of the time it's up 10% or more, which bodes well for an indexing strategy. So if I were to say, cash me out, I'm walking away here, I'd walk away at the 728. But what's getting crediting, if I keep it in there, is that $1.5 million. So the arbitrage play helps.
Let me comment a little bit about income annuities. And again, the great thing about InsMark is you can compare things and see which is better. I really like income annuities. I think they're just an incredible product, especially if you're dealing with people who are older, because an 80-year-old gets a higher income payout than a 50-year-old for the same $1 million. It's also great for people who have tax paid assets as opposed to qualified plan assets, because they don't have to pay a bunch of tax to get the income annuity started. So older people and also people with medical problems that don't have surrogates. So you're dealing with a single woman who's 74, who had cancer 3 years ago, who has $5 million in the market, is terrified because she's worried about principal loss and a market correction. The income annuity is an incredible way for her to get 10-12% return with effectively no risk, and she can live 300 years and it keeps paying her. That is with some of those assets. So income annuities are incredible in those scenarios. So I just want to throw that out. And those are very different than someone who's 55 and has $1 million in a pension plan. Not the same client, but I think income annuities are great products. I just want to add that. So,
by the way, Don, speaking of taxes, if the present administration doesn't get no tax on Social Security, one of the great things about this is income that shows up nowhere. It's not an alternative minimum tax preference item. It doesn't show up on your tax return. It doesn't bracket bump you. It doesn't cause your Social Security to be taxed at a higher rate. That's 100% completely tax-free income coming here, as opposed to if I'm just taking distributions from the IRA, which are 100% taxable from this point forward.
Good point. Hey, Robert Green. There. He didn't ask a question, just made a nice comment. Thank you. I hope you're doing good, Robert. Okay, we have a couple more questions. So from Ken, okay. What would be the commission split on the example plan you showed? I think what Ken is asking is if he works with your firm on this type of case, how do you do a case split if you guys help?
It's typically a 50-50. We do all the work. We will even be with you on the horn with presentation to the client and run all the iterations and variations that these things typically generate. However, if we're going to work with someone, we do make it mandatory that they do have a paid license for repredict, which whether you work with us or not, you're going to want, I believe. When Don first saw this, I was taking him through the whole thing, and 5 minutes into it, he's like, no, I get it. He goes, and once you see this, you can't unsee it, So he goes, I don't know how anybody once seeing this wouldn't be able to, proceed forward without it. I have a saying: a luxury once acquired becomes a necessity. And once you see how this works, it's not a nice to have; it's a need to have. And we really didn't get into everything this can do, and I'm not going to go into it now. But we'll have different combinations and permutations of how Repredict can interact with InsMark in the future. Just a sneak
Well,
peek. Go ahead,
what
Don.
Repredict does is it does two things. One is it makes the process of modifying the carrier data infinitely more efficient and faster, so it saves time and time's money. That's one thing. And then the second thing it does, which is equally important, is because you're not limited by the carrier's illustration software constraints and having to go in there and figure out, okay, now if I do option B and I change the death benefit to level in year 10, does the premium, you don't have those constraints that most of us aren't even knowledgeable enough to know are there. With the Repredict, you can make changes in anything, whether it's death benefits or premiums or loans or whatever you do, and instantly see the impact. So it gives you a window into case design that you really can't get with carrier software or WinFlex. You can't get there. So it's not only super efficient, but it also allows you to understand what's going on with the fundamental chassis of the policy in a way that's impossible with the carrier software. So for those two reasons, and it's reasonably priced. So for those two reasons, I think it's crucial for people that are designing cases that they've got to have Repredict, in my view, or at least I would have to have it if I were doing case design. So, okay, question from let's see, I want to pronounce this Anil. Anil, I think. Forgive me if I pronounce that incorrectly. If a client puts IRA money into this plan, the client will still have to pay taxes. Is that right?
Well, as they're making distributions, they will pay taxes, and we took that into account. Remember, they're taking a pre-tax distribution of $125,000,
Yeah,
and
I think just to
yeah,
jump in, then they added something. Forgive me. They said, sorry, I missed the initial part of the session. No, no problem. Yes, they still have to pay taxes as the money comes out of the pension plan. That is correct. Then that money that they take out of the pension plan, they pay the tax, the IRA, whatever, they pay the tax. Then that money goes into the life insurance policy. And then when the loans come out, they're not paying taxes on that. So the taxes are paid at the time the money comes out of the IRA.
yeah. I
I
don't.
just
Some of you.
overcomplicate the answer because he has his follow-up question. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, some of you maybe my age are older and remember a Fram oil commercial where you'd say, "Pay me now" or "Pay me later." And this is "Pay me now" or "Pay me later." And when you look at "Pay me now," nobody likes to hurry to a tax whooping, but this to me makes sense when you show it to them. Yeah, most people are going to wait to take RMDs. Wait do you see that on the death benefit version of keep it and just take RMDs and reinvest it into a side fund. This is even a more dramatic differential. Okay, and you don't run out of money with the death benefit play. Okay. By the
Yes.
way, Don, if I can just show one other thing
Yeah.
that I think is crucial, this was ultimately beginning impetus. I'm just going to remove this and delete this column. Okay. How many people love getting enforced ledgers and requesting them from insurance companies and having to wait 2 weeks to get them, only for them to be wrong when you do get them? And they can only project them not based upon the original assumptions when you ran the illustration, but with the new assumptions that are, much deteriorated with AG 49. So I'm just going to go back into here. Let's pretend that this policy was sold 4 years ago. Client comes in and he's got his statement with him and he says, you know what, you project. I always tell people there's only two columns that are ever going to be right on this thing. This first one that says year and the second one that says age. Everything else is accurately inaccurate as we can get it. So what I'm going to do is okay, a projection here with Repredict based upon their current numbers. So I'm not going to change the premium. That's going to stay the same. But comes in and says, hey, that original projection you gave me said I have $233,000 at this time. Well, I just got my statement. It's only $200,000. What's that going to look like? Notice up here, I can hit predict all or predict forward. In this case, I want to predict forward because these numbers have already occurred. What's that going to look like? Boom. Okay, your income based upon that will be reduced to $71,000 instead of $83,000. What if it's higher? You can put in the higher amount. So what I would recommend to people is that the case you sell, you put it into Repredict. You can create your own workbook, and every year, then this can be rename 2025 values. Submit. So that you can do, you still want to get an in-force ledger from the insurance company, but if you use this, you saw how accurate it was. You would upload your original as sold illustration and then change the numbers here to give a prediction based upon the parameters of the original illustration. Just wanted to show you how it can be used for in-force ledgers also.
Oh, that's great. I don't see any other questions, unless somebody else sees one.
Yeah, by the
Uh,
way, if you folks, I mean, Don, and if you want to get a hold of me right away, you can. And when these guys send out the link to the video, they'll also send out my contact information, but it's just Chris Jacob. My email is cjacob@nextpointsolutions.com. If you want to contact me on my cell, it's 314-363-6107. And we love working with advisors.
well, thank you so much, Chris. I think we're good. No, nobody else has any comments. You're good, Chris?
I'm good. Yep.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and we'll let you know for episode 2 with the Roth versus the LERP in the next few days. Everybody have a good week.